basic thought I want to leave about the future American trade policy is that unless we come to grips with the reality we're in economically, we're not likely to either have a trade debate worth having, nor are we likely to use the tools of trade policy in a way that actually advances us toward a more dynamic economy and more broadly shared prosperity. And although I used to spend an awful lot of time on Capitol Hill, I don't anymore. And when I do, I went up and testified a couple times recently, I was surprised most by the fact that the underlying assumption of the questions I faced reflected a perspective about the global economy and the U.S. economy that's roughly 40 years out of date. And that where we are, what has changed, has not generated a different way of thinking about the conventions of trade policy, the purpose of trade policy, its aims, nor is it integrated into what I think is a broader economic strategy that serves our interests or serves our values. Jared and I were agreeing earlier about, there's two great values that sort of inform the American experiment. One's individual liberty, the other is equality of opportunity. A good starting point for rethinking trade policy going forward is to take the reality we face in the global economy and say, how do we vindicate those values through our actions, whether it's the scope of tax policy, whether it's the scope of our spending, our idea of our complementary programs, and certainly with what we try and do with trade. Now, I'm a free trader. I'm one of those guys that Jared always complains about. And the reason is philosophical. My dad was a refugee from Lithuania. As a young guy, he used to take me for walks along the Mississippi when I was in Minneapolis, and he would start the conversation with one of those phrases like, Grant, don't forget, people will try and persuade you to relinquish your freedom in return for security, and you shouldn't take that deal because you'll end up with both. And of course, at the age of 6, you really have no idea what that means, to be honest with you. You're just looking at your dad going, oh, God, another one of these conversations. Can we just take a walk on the river? But he was right. And in one sense, whether it's through the scope of what we do with that Orwellian named Homeland Security Department, or whether it's the protection we try and provide in the context of trade policy, the idea that somehow you can offer security and that you can exchange freedom for that and that you will have a better outcome is simply wrong. Ultimately, anyone in government dictating the choice of a single mom going to Walmart on Labor Day to buy shoes and jeans for her kids to send them off to school in Winchester, Virginia, which is the Walmart I end up going to, should not have that choice dictated by our trade policy, in my view. And so in one sense, when I think about trade, and particularly when I think in the context of the world we're facing, I actually want to find a way that vindicates the ability of that woman to make the choice that makes the most sense for her children, which is certainly not 100% tariffs on the shoes she has to buy, so it doubles the cost for somebody at the bottom. So it's just picking up on the benefit side of what Jared was describing as some of the costs. The benefits are there very powerfully. They also embrace the value that we want to vindicate in terms of individual freedom. And so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that trade isn't just about the economics. It's also about the choices we make about the society we want to be in. Okay, so enough about preaching.